Welcome to another episode of The Voice of Generation Climate, The Voice of Gen Z. Today we have with us Pratham Mittal, the founder of Masters Union School of Business, a phenomenal business school being built out of India, challenging the status quo and building a truly Gen Z institution from the lens of education. Pratham, what an honor to have you with us today. Thank you for making the time.
Of course, man, and don't be so formal. We went to school together.
Exactly. So Pratham and I have grown up together too. We're classmates from Doon. So a lot of shared common history. We both went to Doon, then he went to UPenn for college, I went to Berkeley, and then different trajectories along the way. But I think the entrepreneurial DNA is very, very fundamentally alive in both Pratham and us at Climes. So I have so much to learn from you. I think the next 45 minutes that we have together is going to be a serious just mind meld. Excited to have you here.
Happy to chat, man. No, super excited, looking forward to it. Where do we start?
I would love to start with rewind 3 years ago, or even before. What was the origin of Masters Union School of Business, and what's the vision? Like, what is the one core goal you want to achieve with this institution that you're building?
Sure, man. So I think it takes me back to college. I remember I had a class with this professor called Adam Grant, who's a very, very popular professor on the internet. And he was one of the youngest professors at Penn to get tenure, right? So he was one of those legends. And the way he used to teach was very interesting, right? So he never used slides or exams or lectures. He never took attendance. He never did any of those things, right? He would basically come to class, give us a real life project. He didn't even use case studies. He would give us a real life project and he would tell us, hey, listen, take the next 3 or 4 days, be in your teams and go and accomplish this particular goal, right? So he would say, okay, I'm going to give you a budget of $500. Why don't you go and in those $500 come back and you should have created a website that does these things, right? The reason was not to teach us website development. The reason was to teach us how to work in teams in a way that makes, doing something very difficult like building a website in $500 possible. And then we would discuss, what kind of issues we had working in the team, So something as simple as team management, he taught us through developing websites, right? And similarly, in each class, he would give us one of these very interesting. So one time he gave us this project where he said, okay, you are given $500 in the morning. You have to go to a flea market. You have to procure like stuff from the flea market for $500. You come back to the campus. You brand and rebrand all those products, which are actually unbranded right now. And then now you go back to maybe a high street area this time, Center City or downtown, and sell all of those products for a profit on the street.
Yeah.
Now, this is a business lesson, but at the same time, it's a lesson in so many different things, in negotiation, in positioning, in, sales, and in most importantly, branding, right? So, each of his classes used to be these hands-on. And so what I realized was at the end of my 4 years of undergrad, at a very good school, that what happened was that out of the 40 classes I took, perhaps 1 or 2 of them were classes where I felt I learned something, right? The rest of the classes just felt like, hey, listen, I have to pass this exam because I have to get my degree, right? I didn't really learn anything. I didn't feel rewarded. I didn't feel excited about any of those classes. So, and that has always stayed with me that, hey, listen, the education system, we pay so much to it, but it gives us very little back. Even if it's a great institution like Penn or Wharton or Berkeley, right? So many of our classes are still, they prescribe a book and, the teacher speaks something to you for whatever, 4 months, better part of 4 months. At the end of the 4 months, you're supposed to regurgitate all of what you have learned on an exam. And the next day of the exam, you'll forget everything, right? And that really bothered me. So we wanted to create an institution where the curriculum is such for each course, not 1 out of 40, for each course is such that you feel that you're immersed in the curriculum. You feel that, you're actually learning business by actually doing business. So that's why we wanted to start with a business school. But I really hope, as you asked what the vision is, I really hope that Masters Union becomes the force for change in the way curriculum is built today. Right.
That's amazing.
Right now, it's all about books and slides and exams.
Yeah. And you don't remember that. It doesn't even have any meaning or impact, right? Like after you've learned it and you give your exam and then you forget it. And that rote learning methodology has been so ingrained in our Indian education system, but it has an expiration date. And like you're saying, in experiential learning is really where it's at. I had a class similar to what you just defined at Berkeley when there was a class in my first semester. It was called Physics for Future Presidents.
Oh wow!
And yeah, it was run by these two professors. I still remember. Okay, Richard Muller and Bob Jacobson.
Very good.
And the two of them were legends for how well they taught this class. And we asked them at the beginning, I said, why do you call this Physics for Future Presidents? And they said, because it's the base level of physics any future president of a nation should know. And we are expecting future presidents to be created, coming out of this class too. Okay. Wow. And I remember one of the experiments that they did in class in teaching us about, just how pendulum, such a simple concept, right? You can learn it in a book, but these guys hung a bowling ball from the roof, right? From the ceiling. Yeah. Extended it all the way to the end of the room, put it against.
I've seen that video. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and then he let it loose. And physics is gonna dictate that it cannot hit him. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, while the bowling ball was rolling all the way back to his face, everybody in the classroom was panicking and was like, move out of the way. And he didn't move, right? How you can never forget that energy is lost. Yeah. Exactly, right? Energy loss happens even in motion. And
I'll give you another example, And this is not something that's new, right? I mean, look at medical colleges in India or anywhere across the world. A medical college is always situated inside a medical hospital. It's real doctors who come and teach, and students are literally immersed in the hospital from day one. They're doing OPD from day 2 onwards. They're actually working on real life patients. And what they're being taught is not the tool, but the problem. They learn diagnosis before they learn, the biology of this and that. Right? So right now, if you want to teach somebody how to, how a refrigerator works, there are 2 ways to do it. One is that you start teaching them, okay, what is a vernier caliper, how to use a screwdriver. While he's doing all of that, he doesn't even know what he's going to use this stuff for, and he's going to lose all motivation. The best way to teach someone how a refrigerator works is give them a broken refrigerator. Just go figure it out.
And that constructive medium of learning, it's actually part of how Lego works, right? Or mechanics, right? Or any construct your own game, construct your own outcome.
DIY,
right? Exactly, DIY. And that extends into even things like furniture. IKEA is built on that, right? Yeah. And there's this wonderful concept called IKEA effect, which is when you add your own labor into building something, you actually end up loving it and valuing it a whole lot more. And what you're doing is you're bringing that into your educational program. You're saying, build it experientially so you'll love it more and you'll actually soak it in and then be able to practice it far better.
I'll give you another thing, right? So what happens in undergrad, let's say we learned, just tell me about a course you had in your freshman year.
I had drugs in the brain.
Okay, that's a good one. I don't know how to put that one down. But let's say that you had it in your first term, right?
Yeah.
Or in your first year. Then you had 3 more years of education.
Yeah.
Right. And then you finally graduated 4 years after you took that course. Now, what happens is that that seems like a great course and I'm sure you remember. But let's say we're talking about accounting 101, right? You will not remember a lot of the accounting you learned 4 years ago.
Absolutely not.
Right? And so, what also needs to happen is that as you're learning, you need to apply your learnings around the same time. Otherwise, you will forget it. There is that cliche thing, right? If I see it, then I remember it. If I immerse myself in it, then I truly understand it. But it's only when I apply it that it's going to stay with me.
Yeah. And application, right? While you're learning it.
Yeah, that's important.
Is the best time. And if you can learn it, apply it, and then teach it to somebody else, even better.
Yeah.
Right? You'll never ever forget it. So give an example of a course that you're running right now, right? You said how many courses do you have in a year-long program?
So it's a year-long program which has 8 terms. Each term is 6 weeks, and in each term you do 5 courses. So basically 40 courses you do, and each of the courses are essentially a bunch of tasks put together.
Yeah.
Right. So let's talk about accounting, right? We spoke about accounting being super boring, accounting being why am I doing it? I want to pull my hair out kind of a situation more often than not. But the way we teach accounting is that, hey, listen, we don't even we give them some videos to watch how to read a balance sheet, etc. But we don't teach it. What the practitioner here who teaches accounting does, he's from KPMG. He tells students, hey, listen, there's this barber shop outside. There is this restaurant outside. There is this dhaba wala outside. There is this Uber driver outside. Okay. they probably do not have books of accounts. They're small businesses, but they don't have books. And even if they have books of accounts, they're not probably as well drafted. Yeah. All you have to do is go draft their books of accounts. Now you have a subject, you have a stakeholder, right? You have a responsibility, right? You will do whatever it takes to learn accounting by yourself so that you can help that stakeholder.
To get it done, yeah. Because there's a mission, there's an end goal and a purpose, right?
There's a purpose.
Now you're just learning the tools. You're not learning the tool with an aimless direction. You actually have the goal defined and then you're learning the tools to go and make that happen.
Correct. And the direction, or I mean, the goal cannot be an exam, because if it's an exam, then you'll try to game that exam.
Exactly.
Right? You'll be like, okay, what are the questions that usually come in that exam? You know, you'll like think of those kind of things. You'll be like, okay, you know, I mean, I'll just study probably one day before and, you know, ask my seniors, you know, whatever. So like, that's not the objective of learning. It's not to pass an exam.
Look, what you're building with Masters Union, I think is a truly Gen Z institution. We call it Generation Climate Institution, because it's one that's breaking the status quo. And we're lovers, we're absolute lovers of institutions and people who break the status quo, because that's when change happens, man. That's when like huge value is created in society, right? So while you've been building this, where did climate become a theme for you as a builder of Masters Union? Was it a topic you were already thinking about? Did you just, you know, happen to chance upon somebody who said, okay, why don't I come and do a lecture at Masters Union for students? Where did that interest come from?
Sure. You know, at the end of the day, see, college should be looked at as a factory that's producing, you know, human resources, right?
Yeah.
And you're selling human resources to the industry.
Yeah.
And so in a sense, the industry is your customer. And you have to listen to your customers.
Yeah.
So when we go speak to our recruiters, when we go speak to large consulting firms, when we go speak to large enterprises, you know, from a Bain, BCG, McKinsey to a Google, Facebook, Microsoft, they're always telling us, hey, listen, you know, a dimension of what we want in terms of skill sets in students is this appreciation and this awareness of what's happening in climate, right? Because their customers eventually are very sensitive to these things. So I'll give you an example. One of our clients is this company called JK Tire. Right? They're a recruiter. They recruit maybe 5 to 10 kids every year, right? And they have this huge mandate internally that they want to be carbon neutral. They have this huge mandate that, hey, listen, you know, we have to be sustainable in some of our practices. So there are lots of internal metrics that they've put for themselves. And in India, they don't get the talent that can help them think through those kind of things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? And so for us, when we train talent in climate, it becomes a competitive advantage for us almost.
Yeah.
When we go selling our product to the industry, or when our students have to sit for recruitment, right? When our students have worked on some sort of a climate report, when our students are climate aware, when they know exactly how the carbon credit economy works, when they know, you know, what are the positives, negatives of EVs, etc. The fact that EVs might not be as great for India as they are for the US because of the source of, you know, the fossil fuels, etc. All of that. You know, when they speak about these things, you know, the companies really love that, right? Like,
absolutely,
they appreciate that a lot more. And so for us, it was more about, you know, not being conscious ourselves of climate as much as it was to service our clients, you know, to service our recruiters. But as we have started doing that, what we have started realizing is that climate has become its own skill, right? Like the way you had accounting, the way you had finance, the way you had marketing, climate is also becoming its own skill, right?
Yeah.
And not a lot of institutions are teaching that. You only told me that I think Stanford started their climate school.
Yeah, the first new school in 85 years.
There you go.
Right? For Stanford is the Doerr School of Climate and Sustainability.
There you go.
And it was built on a massive endowment from John Doerr, the legendary investor John Doerr.
Yeah.
First school in 85 years, right? And that just shows you the importance of climate and sustainability as a theme in itself. Absolutely. In fact, one of my mentors, who I think you've talked to him too, Anshuman Bapna, calls climate the internet moment. You know, it's like early in the 90s, everything had to go from pre-internet to post-internet. It could be insurance, it was banking, it was, you know, telecommunications. Everything had an internet moment, and just it became a layer, right? That any vertical had to cross over into. And the internet was like a high lever to boost your reach, right? Similarly, climate is having an internet moment, which is every industry, any consumer consumption type, any stakeholder in society is having a climate moment too, where it's like you're stepping into the shoes of saying, okay, I can play my part. I can be responsible. If I'm making steel, how do I make more climate friendly steel? Yeah. If I'm making sugar, how do I actually produce more climate friendly sugar, more water efficient? If I'm teaching, right? If I'm building an education institution, how do I build a more climate friendly education institution by creating talent for the industry, right? If I'm a procurement official at JK Tire, how am I actually procuring materials in a way that are going to be more water efficient, carbon efficient, waste efficient? So it's almost like a whole theme in itself. And I don't think it's any one expertise or skill. It's a combination of very, very many things, right? Like I think it just comes out of basic curiosity.
Yeah.
To be able to say, okay, like there's a crisis going on. What can I do to play my part? Let me break down what the crisis is. It's a water crisis. It's a pollution crisis. It's a carbon crisis. It's a waste crisis. Okay, now within that, what are the solutions? What's the most optimal way to make these solutions, get deployed?
So do you see like in companies now, I know the chief sustainability officer is a thing in the US. Is it happening in India? Are you seeing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got into the climate space 3 years ago, Jan 2020, started by building that not-for-profit sustainability mafia.
Yeah.
That time till now, there's a huge leapfrog in the number of chief sustainability officers out there in the market. And what's amazing is it's not just people becoming chief sustainability officers, it's actually founders of companies, CEOs and founders themselves adopting the role of being sustainability officers. It's marketing officials also who are playing the role of being sustainability officers. And that's fine because a big motivation is how do I actually look good to my stakeholders, right? And that's totally okay. Investors are asking it, customers are asking it, vendors are asking it, their buyers overseas are asking it.
So it's an extrinsic motivation almost. It's not coming from within that I want to be nice to the environment. It's coming because the market forces are forcing you to.
And that's fine. Whether it's intrinsic or extrinsic, right? Few people fall into the intrinsic camp and they just genuinely want to do really well, right? We have some brand partners like Slurp Farm, right? Yeah. And a couple more who intrinsically care to do good because it's the right thing to do, right? Fireside Ventures, for example, as a fund has a value of good theme because they intrinsically care to do, right? Rain matter too. But extrinsically, there's a far larger set of stakeholders in society who have other motivations. This just ends up being like a medium to feed their extrinsic motivation. And that's okay.
Which is fair. Yeah.
It's totally fine, right? Yeah. So as long as the job gets done of being slightly more climate positive than before, so be it.
Like, Anirudh, what is it? So, I feel like when we speak about climate, right, a big part of the conversation becomes and maybe stops at EVs.
Yeah.
Right. How do you see that? Right. Is it just about EVs?
It's far more than EVs. EVs are only the most relatable because most people drive, right? Yeah. So you can relate to the fact that, okay, I have to switch from one car to a nice car to a non-ice car, electric car. And that'll make a little bit of a difference on energy consumption and carbon emissions, right? You can quantify it and relate to that. But it actually goes far beyond it. It can go into even things like, having a renewable energy system on your rooftop.
Construction.
Yeah, it can go into more sustainable materials for your house. It can go into just having, switching over from normal meat to alternative proteins and alt meats. Huge industry in India now, right? Booming. It can go into putting a compost pit in your house so that your food waste gets disposed of safely. I think there are 4 or 5 large categories: waste, water, carbon, energy, and pollution. These are the 5. And within each, you have so many solutions, right? So which ones are accessible to you as an individual, Pratham, in your home? Which ones are accessible to you, Pratham, as a builder of an institution like Masters Union, right? Even for your own building where you guys operate out of. So electric cars is one high leverage point to reduce carbon emissions in society, right? In the planet. But there's so much more we have to do as well. Right? Biofuels is a huge one. Then
no, absolutely. And even just the entire the carbon economy, right? The credits and etc. That's I was just reading that some big large bank bought thousands of acres of hundreds of acres of forest land so that they can sell those credits.
Yeah.
in some
So
form.
exactly. So climate financing is kind of the medium to enable climate solutions to scale. That's really what Climes does as a company too. We are the climate finance highway system in between to make sure that money can go from individuals, consumer brands, and enterprises toward climate finance, toward climate solutions that are doing the good work of like carbon removal, particularly at scale, right? And it's in finding those people on the demand side that we have identified so many Gen Z people who are coming out of the shadows and saying, hey, I care. Like,
Got it.
I'm very interested in actually playing my part. Make it easy for me, right? That's where it was so amazing when last year, I remember when you said, hey, Climes, Anirudh, come over to Masters Union, do a 90-minute session.
Yeah.
And like, just show these guys, what's going on in the climate scene over here.
Yeah, that was very well received, by the way. I feel like that was a great kickoff for the term.
And true to your style, it was such an experiential class that we ended up doing as well, right? Yeah. We made the whole climate finance economy come alive.
Exactly. And by the way, we have to do it again. The new batch is coming in. So.
Would love to, definitely. Yeah. So you're in good company right now because Stanford was the first one to kick off a climate school and completely like homegrown to a degree, out of your own curiosity and your own interest. You kicked off that introduction of climate as a lever to your students, right? Yeah. Tell me what happened after that.
Yeah. So I think we decided to, we thought about two things, right? One was that should we make climate its own concentration, its own specialization, right? And we thought there are enough jobs in the country right now, or even across the world, especially in Europe, where we can pitch our students. The other thought was, hey, listen, let's make it a subject right now. Let's make it one of the courses. And let's see how this market develops, right? And one big challenge we faced was that when we decided to launch it as a specialization, not a lot of students signed up for it. Because I think a lot of the students are not yet ready to accept this as a career. It will change, and it's changing. Yeah. It's changing. So we decided to launch it as a small module, which you kicked off. Now, what we started seeing after that is that, these 160, 170 kids that we had at the time, they all want an ROI out of their MBA program. They all, want a job. They all want to have a job, like that, right? But, after that first kickoff event, I think there were 5 or 6 kids whose switch turned a little bit on, right? They started thinking from a different perspective. They, in fact, a lot of them decided to sit out of placements and say that, let us create some sort of a grassroots movement. Let us create some sort of a student organization where we can, do some advocacy, where we can learn, where we can create a community, and let's see where it goes, right? Let's see where it goes. We think this climate thing is cool. It's interesting. We perhaps can build a career out of it. So I think what that initial session did was plant the seed that is now growing, right? It's become a plant. I think in a couple of years, it'll become its own tree and then its own specialization. So at least in India, I think one thing I can commit to you is that we'll be the first college to have climate.
You actually are, because I looked around.
Yeah.
So there, the IITs, some of the IITs have sustainability groups, student-led sustainability groups. But there's nothing that's actually got the ambition of what you have at your school now, which is Climes, right? That's what they actually, that's what they've named themselves as a student group. Climes wants to be a breeding ground for future climate entrepreneurs, right? Mm-hmm. It's a place for talent to be scouted, right? Into becoming climate and sustainability officers within large conglomerates in India, right? It's a place to just come together and learn about different climate solutions. It's got a lot of purpose to it.
Yeah.
And it's a bet on the future. It's a bet on saying hey, traditional careers, kind of what we initially came here for.
Yeah.
But I'm going to take that risk of saying, okay, maybe I'll just go figure out how can I play my part in the climate movement.
And some of my best kids have done that, by the way.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's the kids who want to experiment with their careers a little bit.
And that's beautiful. That level of risk taking is fundamentally what we need in India, right? There's no bigger problem right now than climate change at all. So if the brightest minds of our generation don't step up to the challenge, we're doomed.
But tell me one thing, we had that EVS course in school. I think NRK used to teach that.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it was okay, there are two things about it. One, I think the content was quite cool.
Yeah.
And so we learned a little bit about composting. We learned a little bit about watershed. No, what was that? Sorry. Rainwater harvesting and all of that. Now, I mean, at the end of the day, we had to pass an exam where we had to remember stuff. where we had to just like, I remember it was like an easy scoring exam.
Yeah.
That's an exam that you can
It's
get
the easiest
99,
one to score on. Yeah, for sure.
right? All of that. So, I mean, I feel like if you had to design a climate curriculum, right, for let's say even K-12, where it's not just about like being examined on, where you can actually make a mindset shift in the students. How do you go about that?
Such an interesting question. Interesting question, because I think one of the beauties we've had in India is kind of like how you nailed it. We had EVE or EVS, one of the two in CBSE or ISC, right? Very early on in our schooling. So academically, we were exposed to the fact that like, yes, there's a climate emergency and we have to play our part in not throwing trash and, just being more efficient with our resources. I think that awareness was created. I actually think there was a different, system that we had at school, which was far more of an EVS course, which was our midterms. So like going up into the mountains, into like nature, right? And then carrying our trash back or disposing it off efficiently, spending time in nature and learning like how our natural systems, like how they sustain themselves, how human intervention is actually like a problem unless it's done in a very, very sustainable way. I think that was far more of an EVE or EVS course than any academic program that we had, right? And that kind of goes back to the experiential learning that you guys also practice. So the combination of the two, like learn academically, but then go out there and practice it. So important, right?
Have you seen any other institutions do a good job of like, making students climate conscious or having that mindset shift happen a little bit?
I don't know about educational institutions, but I've been reading this wonderful book called Let My People Go Surfing, which is by the founder of Patagonia, Johan Schonard. He's like my hero. And in it, he talks about how at one point they really wanted to embed the culture of sustainability into each Patagonia employee.
Got it.
And how do they do that? You can like talk about being a sustainable brand. You can talk about like being climate conscious, but how do you really, really imbibe it? He took them all on a trip to Patagonia, like in Chile.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right. And they spent weeks just walking around in nature, like as a group, as a tribe, and seeing like what the end outcome is of what they're trying to preserve. I think it's that kind of a system of go and see what's at risk, then come back so you know your end purpose.
Yeah.
Just really,
that goalpost,
it's like going to the Kirana store and doing their books, right?
Yeah.
You show them the goalpost.
Yeah.
Right?
Once you see a sick patient, you learn not to just pass an exam, but to, make that patient better.
Exactly. So I'm truly like grateful and super happy that you guys you initiated the conversation, right? And that flint, that fire starter is all that was needed for you to say, why not? Let me open up a space for my students to start thinking about this, right?
No, but like one challenge that we faced was that, we'd love to invest more in it, right? We'd love to do more of these courses, but like, where do you get faculty, right? I mean, you run a company, it's very hard to get your time. You can come and do a kickoff, but like, we don't have PhDs in climate. We don't have existing professors who I can recruit from the other colleges. How do we go about solving that problem?
Great question. I think I don't have a great answer for this, but I don't think there's a climate expert.
Yeah. Okay.
Nobody is an expert in climate or sustainability. Because it's actually a theme. It's a layer. It's a very generic thing. You could be a phenomenal designer who's playing their role in the climate fight. You could be a phenomenal engineer or a phenomenal artist or a phenomenal whoever playing their role in the climate fight. And I think somewhere maybe the answer is, it's not about finding one climate or sustainability expert. It's about finding people who are the best in their field, but fundamentally committed to solving climate change with it, and have them come and teach modules within climate impact, right? Like that's kind of what Terra is also doing to an extent.
Yeah. I mean, Terra's doing a great job, I think, teaching online.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to understand from Anshuman as well, how we can do that in a more offline setting and make it even more immersive. Can we take students to certain locations where, they see it for themselves, can't take them to Patagonia all the way, but perhaps somewhere in Rohtak, something is happening, which is quite cool.
Absolutely.
In school, we used to go to these midterms, right? And we used to also have those, I forget what those programs are called, we were taken to those villages.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to do some sort of construction.
Yeah. Like there was one that was adopted by Dune as well.
Correct.
What's it called?
I think we're thinking about the same thing.
Yeah.
The thing was not coming. And then you also had the case studies of like Telonia and Barefoot College and all of these things, which are not climate per se, but like in the fringes of sustainability. If at that level, like we were engaged a little bit more, I have a feeling that, why, by the way, the founder of Barefoot College is also a DOSCO, right? Also from Dune School, if I'm not wrong. And I think Bunker Roy, correct?
I think so, yeah.
I think that's his name. I remember reading an article about him or by him where he spoke about how like his childhood experiences really shaped like his career and then got him to start Barefoot College. So I think what you can do in this K-12 experience very early on, if you can make students,
absolutely,
like for example, I think my mom was very strict with me about disposing of like garbage properly, like something very similar. Like so till today, like I judge people who throw stuff out of the car. Like I would not in like 100 million years even dream about throwing something out of the car. Like that's such a crime.
Yeah,
that's such
a
crime.
What phase do you think in the developmental journey is the most crucial for that hard imprinting to happen? K through 12, but specifically what phase within it?
I think even earlier, maybe like K, right? I think by 12, 13, your brain is already like quite developed.
Yeah.
But I think these things have to be hardwired, right?
Absolutely.
I think it's happening now. Like I see a lot of people in our undergrad program who apply. So we ask for an essay, right? Like as part of the application, and we talk about, what one large world problem you'd like to solve if you were given $100 million. That's literally the essay that they have to apply with. And Anirudh, you can probably imagine what percentage of students talk about climate. It's incredibly high.
Really? Like, give me a rough number. What percentage would it be?
I'll actually like do analysis and say the exact number, but like anecdotally speaking, more than 50%.
What?
Yeah.
That's insane.
What other world problem would you want to solve? Take a poverty, etc. But students think that answer is not good enough for a college.
Yeah, for a college. It doesn't impress as much.
Yeah. So climate is something that you can find enough data about, but also it seems thoda hatke. It seems thoda,
sounds sexy. It sounds ambitious.
Yeah. It sounds that you're like, you're aware. You can't say poverty. You can't say like pollution too much because pollution is overdone now.
Yeah.
The climate is now the hot topic.
But how many of them, from when you guys read it, actually so like truly, authentically come across as them committed to wanting to solve a problem? They're assuming money is not a problem.
Yeah, they're not. I think they're doing it for the college application essay, to be honest, right? But even that is a great start.
Yeah. At least they're thinking about it.
At least they're thinking about it, right? They're doing some research. Maybe if not them, then their kids will be born with that.
Yeah. It takes one, it starts with, if you think it, you say it. If you can say it, you start doing it. If you start doing it, you actually influence other people around you to also think it. And that creates the flywheel, right? It's a wonderful thing. So you just need fire starters in society. And that first piece, even if they thought, maybe this is a good idea to just write about this, somewhere it's planted the idea that maybe they'll act on it too.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. One day.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
So they're writing the essays and then they're coming to Masters Union and now they're actually learning through a community like Climes and then all the guest speakers that you bring, right? Saying, hey, your first career can actually be a climate career.
Yeah. No. And like even more entrepreneurially speaking, right? One is finding a job, but the other is like becoming an entrepreneur. Like in India, I haven't met too many climate entrepreneurs other than yourself, right? But as these undergrads, at least the young kids who come, and if they're aware tomorrow when they're looking to start companies, when they're looking to think about, their capstone project or their venture initiation program or, whatever platforms they, are given, I think like, given that they've done some background work, they'll know about the gaps in the industry. They'll know about the opportunities in the industry. They're like, okay, this thing exists in the US. Can I build it for India?
Yeah.
Build it for the rest of the world. So I think like the next few years are going to be interesting. I'm going to track these kids who wrote about, solving a problem in climate and see, how many actually sort of, follow through on that.
The long time gestation, like mapping and tracking of people actually gives you such interesting like results. Because then you can, over a long enough time frame, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, see like how change makers have made change happen in society, right? And you're really launching change makers into society. Typically, where do they end up going? So far in the last 3 years, what fields have your graduates really gone into? What's been the preference?
So it's quite interesting, right? Let's talk about industries, like a breakdown of industry and a breakdown of kind of companies, right?
Yeah.
So the industry is, let's say 30% is consulting.
Yeah.
Right. So this is like, across different industries, they're working as consultants. The second would be like maybe 15 to 20% would be fintech. Because fintech is like growing like anything. The jobs that pay really well, from a razor pay to a cred, most importantly. Then another 20% are going into edtech, which was sort of, of course, the last couple of years it was big. And it still remains. I mean, even though there's funding winter there, it still remains to be quite big. Then 25% would be like your large conglomerates, like your Google, Facebook, Microsoft, right? And the rest would be spread between like the long tail of, different kinds of startups, right? So some in, like manufacturing, some in D2C. D2C is actually quite big as well.
Yeah.
There's one student who's gone into venture capital as well. So that's from an industry standpoint. But if you look at from a standpoint of, what are the roles that they're working on? It's basically 4 roles. One is product management, where they're leading a product. Second is chief of staff, where they're helping the founder be better. Third, of course, is consulting. We already spoke about that. And fourth is, business development, which is either marketing, sales, or branding. So that's how we think about our students. But what we are seeing change is that earlier, out of an MBA program, the expectation was, I want to go into a large company.
Yeah.
Right. That I want to go into, your Unilevers of the world, and I want to go into Nestle's of the world. Right. But that's changing like very fast, super fast. Now people are like, I want to work at Mamaearth. Now people are like, I want to work at Cred and not at HDFC Bank.
Yeah.
Even though I know that HDFC Bank, if I go in, they'll never fire me, and Cred might fire me. But still, I'll choose Cred because, the work there will be a lot more interesting. I'll learn a lot more. So that's the shift that we are seeing.
Away from safety, just safety to more purpose, more like, okay, I can wear different hats. Stimulation. Yeah. More experiential learning. Again, it's the same thing, right? You have far more experiential learning in these new age organizations than in a lot of the older ones.
I think people also care about like how close to the leadership they're working.
Yeah.
You're working in Nestle and you've just been recruited. There are probably 8 layers between you and the CEO.
Yeah.
And there's like a ladder that you have to climb, which is not as exciting. People are not that patient anymore.
Yeah.
Right? When you're working at Mamaearth, between you and Guzzle, there are probably 2 managers.
Yeah.
Maybe none if you're working as a chief of staff.
And that's what people want now, right?
Yeah.
So I want to dive into an area that is more about the role each stakeholder plays in society. What is the power of an individual to you? Like, how powerful can an individual be in making change happen? So what do you think is the role of an individual? How powerful can an individual be? And give me an example of a story of just someone who's really just been a catalyst for a particular movement.
Sure. I mean, I'll speak from my industry, right? Education.
Yeah.
In mid 80s, early 90s, HBS came up with this case study method pedagogy, right? Where they would teach their students through the case study method. And then HBS, became the rank 1 institution in the world, right? For business.
Yeah.
Now, what happened after that was that every other business school across the world started using the HBS case study method.
Yeah.
Because everyone found out and everyone realized that this is a great way to teach, right? It's almost like pseudo experiential.
It's like role playing.
Yeah, it's almost there, right? And today, all business schools use the Harvard case study method. Like, it's ubiquitous. Now, for me, that's a great case study where Harvard came up with this system. They proved that the system works, and then they changed the education system, at least for all business schools across the world, right? And so, I think that's something that I look up to a lot.
Yeah.
And if you can change the education system, then the ripple effects of that change are huge.
Absolutely. It's the whole butterfly effect.
It's a butterfly. It starts at the education system. So that's also what motivated us to, start Masters Union, right? And that's why our objective is also to get in the top 10 global business school rankings. And then everyone across the world will be like, hey, listen, what the hell are they doing that they got into the global top 10 so fast, right? Let's adopt what they're doing. And then, more people adopt, it snowballs from there and the education system changes. Yeah. That's our dream.
That's amazing. When we talk about first principles, right? I think the first of all principles, the first is the education system, because it starts there and then it leads to everything else.
Yeah.
So if you want to create massive change in society, you got to reach people at the point of learning, so that then they imbibe it and then they actually act on it, right?
Absolutely.
So whatever change we want to drive in our society for the better, right, to lead us to a cleaner, safer, better, fairer future, it has to start with the education system, and that's really where you come in. In building a smash the status quo, power on. We're going to like break all the rules and just create an experiential learning system that people love. Not just individuals love, even recruiters love. Like society needs it, right? Create change makers who are coming on, not just rote learners. So with that system, what are one or two areas of change that it doesn't have to be climate impact, one or two areas that you fundamentally feel in the next 5 to 10 years Masters Union wants to have played a role in facilitating?
I want to smash the fucking classroom, man. Sorry to use that word, but I'm very frustrated with classrooms, right? Our classrooms are structured the same way that Socrates used to teach 2000 years ago. There's like this stage in the front and somebody's standing and then somebody's listening. And, the front students who are sitting in the front are engaged. The one in the back are not really engaged. Everyone's supposed to be taught at the same time and, they have to take the same exam. There is no personalization. There is no engagement. At the end of the day, the teacher also is like, I just want to finish the syllabus. This is all due to Industrial Revolution, because at that time, the education system was created to create people who can work in factories. But the industry has changed, the game has changed, the world has changed, but the education system has not. Genuinely, I feel so strongly that, hey, finance has completely changed in the last 50, 60 years, right? Think about how we used to trade stocks 20 years ago and see how we trade stocks today. You look at any other industry, from construction to how roads are developed, how hotels work, how hospitality, everything has changed in the last 20 years, but education in the last 2000 years has not changed.
It's called the Socratic method.
It's called the Socratic method. Exactly. There you go. And we feel proud of that. We feel proud of the baggage. We feel proud of not having progressed. Right? We talk about legacy and we put Harvard on a pedestal. We say Harvard is so great. Right? But because of their legacy, not because of their disruption. Whereas in every other industry, we award disruption. In education, we penalize disruption. So I think to begin with, my goal with Masters Union is that can I change the classroom, even just the basic architecture of the classroom? And you've seen what our classroom
is like. Yeah, no books, no physical books at all.
Right? Like, can we change the way that, a teacher comes into class and speaks for 60 minutes straight away? That doesn't work. Can we change the way that students are just listening, right? And half of them are not even listening. So, and I go back to that example of how accounting is taught here, right? Can we make every course come alive? Can we make every course not be like a set of books and exams, but a course be some sort of an experiential journey that everyone has to go through? And I think that's very powerful. That's going to
your campus actually has like a little bit of a Dexter's Laboratory, like mad lab vibe to it, with just stuff going on. Like, you're right, in this experiential format. There's no one fixed environment for a specific, like you said, teacher come in, students sit, learn, right? It's far more experiential. And I think that's a great ambition to have. To be a top 10 business school on the planet, while making experiential learning break the status quo of the Socratic method, right? So that people actually enjoy learning far more.
Absolutely.
And if in doing that, we can also facilitate meeting India's climate goals and the planet's climate goals, nothing like it.
No, and you have to stand out from the crowd, from the pack, right? And I think like climate is also a great competitive advantage that companies can have, and like as business schools we can have, right? Like if I have to stand out from the crowd in India, I'll give you an example. I have to apply for these international accreditations, right? Which all business schools have to go through: AACSB, Equus, AMBA, right? And when I tell them, hey, listen, that I have these initiatives around climate, they automatically look at me very differently.
100%. It's Stanford and Masters Union.
Yeah.
Who else?
And in fact, let me tell you about one more thing. So there's this business school ranking, right? The top 10 ranking that we talk about. It's the Financial Times business school ranking.
Yeah.
I'm sure you would have heard of it, right? Now, last year, Financial Times ranking was 60% student outcomes, which means placements. Okay. 20% diversity, and 10% research.
Yeah.
Okay, and 10% was like how internationalized you are, like how many international students you have and how many international faculty you have. Okay, so 60, 20, 10, 10. Okay, this year they changed the ranking parameters. They brought in a ESG index as 10%.
Wow.
Yeah, like 10% of the ranking is now ESG.
That's insane. I mean, it's similar to what happened to enterprises, large enterprises in the last few years too. Right. Now it's happening to the educational institutions.
Yeah, but guess what happened? Guess what happened? As soon as ESG was introduced as 10%, the entire ranking took a beating. Everything is changed. Everything is shuffled now. You know, like HBS was number one, but it's not number one anymore.
Yeah.
I think like Chicago Booth has come out as number one, or Stanford has come out as. So things have really like shooken up. So now what's going to happen is this year, all the business schools across the world are going to start thinking, hey, listen, you got to realign.
Yeah, priority.
Start thinking about ESG, right? And that's going to change behaviors like crazy. So it's happened in business schools. It's going to happen in other rankings as well. In fact, Times Higher Education, they released the global top 100 university rankings, top 1,000, whatever.
Yeah.
They've also come with a thing called the Times Impact Rankings, which is about how each university in that ranking has contributed to the United Nations Development Goals. It's only about that. And let me share something very interesting with you. And I would have loved to share my screen. Is that out of the top 100, impact universities across the world, 2 are from India, which we have never crossed the top 100 ranking in India.
Which ones are they?
LPU, Lovely Professional University.
Oh, damn! Lovely Professional University.
Yes,
wow.
Yes. And another one in the south called Amrita University.
Okay, that's amazing, man.
So top 100, right? We have cracked, and that's because like of our work in ESG.
Yeah.
So we are slightly ahead of the pack when it comes to that. And you should look at this ranking, the Times Higher Education Impact Rankings. It's only about sustainable goals.
I haven't come across it yet, but I will. So to feed that for Masters Union now, right? And like that could be an extrinsic motivator, but I know you're an intrinsically motivated guy for doing good, just for the purpose of doing good too, and creating change makers in society. What's the 1 or 2 things that you would need to facilitate or accelerate like Masters Union becoming the leader of the pack with ESG, climate, sustainability?
I think like we are a platform, right? Any university, any college is a platform for students and for students, learners on one side, and trainers and teachers and aficionados and passionate folks on the other. So I think we have the students, we have the hunger. Now, can we bring enough people like Anirudh to campus every now and then, that they keep stimulating the students, that they keep reminding them of the opportunities, they keep forcing them to think? I think that's something that we desperately need, right? We need 100 Anirudhs. And I think we can make a big change out of it. But, I'll tell you one thing, very honestly, I did not think about climate and I wasn't intrinsically motivated until the time I met you, right? I met you, I saw what you were doing, and it was your excitement for the subject that created excitement in me. It wasn't anything else. Honestly, like I don't have too many friends who are doing ESG work or who are doing cool stuff in climate. So just meeting you, discussing with you, I think, there was this cross-pollination, there was this osmosis that happened, So I think like what we also need is, there's podcasts like these, these climate conscious podcasts like these to go even more widespread. And I think like that will really help my students, start thinking like that.
Absolutely. Pratham, you're a Gen Z guy building a Gen Z institution with students who are also Gen Z, Generation Climate. And I think they're going to go on to build Gen Z institutions themselves in society, right? That's the ripple effect. That's the power of an individual in making wide-scale change happen, particularly about climate, because it's got a ticking, clock on the problem. We've got the next 6-7 years to solve it. We need far more of those catalysts and fire starters in society. And I am betting that a lot of them are going to come out of Masters Union and really be building the organizations we need, right? The solutions we need in society. So thank you so much for the work you do. And thanks for being here with us today.
No, thanks for having me. This was amazing. Great conversation and great to see you smile. I love your wide smile.
Great. Thanks a lot, man, Pratham. Really appreciate it.